Everybody likes little TNA.
A straight All right, welcome to the TNA podcast. We are celebrating a great day. We're finally going video. So my name's Tyler, and the rest of our crew's here. Ashley, my beloved.
Hi.
Aww.
And Simon, our friend.
Hey, what's up, bitches?
Friend, compadre, comic relief, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever it is.
It's really the backbone of the whole thing.
I'd say so, too. And then Lauren, our dear, well, we call you our spiritual mother. You're like the grand matriarch of the spiritual community that we've developed here in the Central Valley. And
we also have one special guest, and that's the Fly.
Oh, yes, the
Right.
fly.
Flying
that
in and
keeps...
out of camera. So we've named him.
the
His name's
messenger.
Kevin.
His name's Kevin. He's a fly.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure everybody's represented.
He has
So
a
if
message.
I say "fuck you, Kevin," then
We know it's the fly.
He has a message for us. We just can't understand. And then, so we also have our Daniel. He's our engineer for the podcast.
Yeah, let's give it a
cameras on
real
it.
quick.
Yeah.
Just a light little clap here so he doesn't get blasted. But thank you. Daniel's going to be working on the ones and twos over there, making sure that we look good, switching in between in real time and keeping everything dialed. And this is his first show doing this, right? So don't screw it up.
Is that to say, like, if you get motion sickness from the camera changes?
That's
we know how
Daniel's
to
that
do
would be
it?
Daniel.
That's all Daniel's
Got
fault,
it.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of virgins in the room. We're popping cherries today. So
right.
it's a good day.
We discussed a video of a video graphic hymen that we were
Yes,
breaking
yes,
today.
Yes.
That's right. Video hymen. She's popping our.
She's popping
video.
our video hymen.
Video hymen.
We have our matriarchal mother
Yes.
breaking our
That's
Yes.
Oedipus complex
Yeah.
going on
Okay.
here
Okay.
today.
Okay.
So
TNA.
I digress.
on the TNA podcast, what we really want to do, this podcast is in an effort to serve our larger goal of bringing healing to the masses through community. We're hoping to reach a broader audience through the video, but we also really are focused on the one-on-one, the nuts and bolts, the kind of rubber meets the road stuff here in the Central Valley. So if you live in the Fresno area, we have all sorts of resources. Please email us at sometna4ya@gmail.com. There's a website, brotherhoodoflivingdivinity.com. That's our men's group, and you can find more information about how to come to one of our Tuesday men's meetings. And Simon, he's got the shirt on. He's representing today. And
This is Daniel's shirt, by the way. I stole it.
I'm on you now.
Are you on me?
Yeah.
Were you not on me when I was featuring?
Well, he was talking.
So this is the shirt right here.
Yeah.
You can head to bold.com, right? Is it
right,
bold.com?
brotherhoodoflivingdivinity.com. Bold
Short
is
name.
yeah.
Here's your-
Bold was a hard one.
What are these are actually really great shirts. This is a premium tee. You can see it doesn't do the weird thing where it pokes out right here. It's just a nice fit. It fits around all my musculos, and it makes me look really good.
You're looking fly, Simon.
Yeah.
You guys be the judge. Please leave comments. Let us know what you think.
On how fly Simon looks.
Now, sweating
On a
at me.
scale 1 through 10, go.
Yeah, 10's only. All right.
Oh my God, that makes me think of hotornot.com.
Do you remember Hot or Not? That was great. All right, sorry, I don't want to digress.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anyway.
Anyways,
We digress.
so today we're actually here. We're gonna be talking about you, Lauren. Lauren's our guest. She's Lauren. You just had a pretty miraculous experience. Is miraculous an accurate word?
Sure, I would call it miraculous. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just went to Rosarito, Mexico.
Rosarito, Mexico.
Rosarito, Mexico. Is it Rosarito or Rosarito?
Rosarito.
Okay. And you went to an Ibogaine clinic. They served Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT as a healing modality. And, for me, so you and I have a similar history. I was in my 20s, hopelessly addicted and powerless over drugs and alcohol. I shared that in the second podcast we did on audio. And the reason I bring that up is because people like us that have a history like that it's a dangerous territory to go into, maybe taking a mind-altering substance again.
Yeah, for sure. Is this really where you want to start this shindig, though? Like, should we back up a little bit and say, like, how I even got to the Ibogaine clinic?
Well, what I actually wanted to do is kind of get into the story that led you up to making that decision. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We had it all planned out.
You want me to go right now?
Sure. Yeah. Go
Okay.
right ahead.
You're on. Go.
Well, I mean, the part about how I wanted to kill you, or like that part?
Well,
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so basically, I've had a long history of trauma over the course of my life, which I'm sure we'll get into at some other point, that I've successfully experienced a lot of healing around and was able to move through. 6 years ago, my mom passed away. She had an incredible amount of suffering, and I was left with some pretty deep symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. There were lots of different therapies and tens of thousands of dollars that I poured into that and attempting to heal it. I'm very open to lots of alternative therapies. I've done everything from cranial sacral to EMDR to holotropic breath work, and everything has really worked in moving me forward, but not having a breakthrough. So enter Tyler. Simon, I require you do all the Tyler voice parts tonight.
Yeah, sure. We could just fucking talk about it. No problem.
So Tyler, came into my life through Ashley and had shared numerous times that he felt like psychedelics would be useful for me to move forward.
Did he use like the really intense Tyler hands? Was he?
It's like, you really have to
This is
try
gonna
it.
help you
This
so
is really
much.
going to help you out.
So
like-
much. This is really going to help you. And I was incredibly resistant because, like you had said, when I got sober, I was 21 years old, 22 years old. I got sober very young. My whole adult life has been working a program. And when my mom passed away, I had a relapse. So then I got, I doubled down. Like, I didn't keep myself safe enough. I didn't protect myself enough. So now I have to like put more armor on in order to make sure I stay sober this time. And then in waltzes, Tyler and tells me, just take a drug and your life's going to be fine.
let me just clarify. I never said that.
Can we just say that that's what I heard?
Okay.
I'm not saying you
We'll say
said
that.
that. I'm saying that's what I
That's
heard.
what she heard.
So I had mounted all of this resistance, and every time that Tyler and Ashley would have an experience, and not so much you, because I'm in a different dynamic with you. Like, I could listen very neutrally to your experience and
Yeah.
actually really enjoy listening to you, not be triggered by it at all. We had so many great conversations.
Yeah, I always enjoyed talking to you about my experiences.
Oh my God, it was just so beautiful to hear what you were, evolving through, and I loved it. And then, Tyler and Ashley would bring it up to me, and it was like bringing up all of this resistance. And I realized that I needed to start doing work around it because Tyler had become like a cuss word in my head. Like I was just cursing you all the time, like, fucking Tyler.
Was it because, were you like annoyed with me? Like the way I would, was because I was talking like this about
Because that's just how he talks. He can't help it.
It was because you would just show up with your stupid jazz hands. No, I'm just kidding. No, honestly, it was because whatever you were talking about was just stirring an internal resistance in me. And I just know from the work I've done that, like, when resistance comes up, that is my ego pulling for me to stay put because I'm going to travel into the unknown. So it's like pulling me back into, no, this is the reality. It's right here. This is the reality.
This is where we're safe.
This is where we're safe because we know what's here. Here we know. And so I had a lot of, resistance come up for me, and I started doing work around it. I wrote multiple resentment inventories on Tyler, and
which is part of the 12-step
part of the
program.
12-step process. We have kind of a rule of thumb. If you bring up something more than 3 times, you're pissed at it, you need to write about it. So I did a lot of inventories. I did a lot of writing. I bitched about him a lot to my support system. And I actually even had a conversation with you where I was like, I love you and I love that you're growing. And I don't want to talk about psychedelics. We can talk about the spiritual principles, and we can not talk about how you got there.
Yeah. And
And-
which I totally respected. I totally understood where you're coming
And
from.
it was such a loving conversation.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't. I was like, oh, and I had this kind of feeling. I was the sense that there was something going on for you around it, but like I couldn't. I also didn't want to like leave out important things that were going on in my life and not share them with one of my best friends. So you just very gently had a boundary, and I was like, oh, totally, I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, we've done a lot of deep work together.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean like in the development space, but I just mean like just moving through a lot of life together.
Yeah.
So, we have that kind of relationship where we can have those conversations and they don't have to be
awkward or
No, not at all. And we've done enough work as individuals, I think, to come to the table and just want to love and respect each other the highest we can. You, on the other hand, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So I almost didn't officiate their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wrote out a letter that I was going to read to you guys about how I felt that although I loved you both so dearly, it was not in clean energy for me to marry you so angry.
Mm-hmm.
And that I didn't want to start your marriage off like that. And then I just imagined how devastated you would be. And I was like, I have to get over this. Like, really have to get the fuck over this. And that sent me into this place of I have to deconstruct all of these belief systems I have that make you wrong. Like, because I've made you wrong. Black and white thinking, sick thinking. Like, I made you wrong. I made what you're talking about unsafe. I'm not open-minded to anything you're sharing with me, so I'm not in a healthy thinking space.
Well, and I just will say, like even for me, like especially before I ever, I had a big kind of transition recently, but was stone cold sober 7 years, right? And never thought I would touch a mind-altering substance again. And if anybody would have come to me prior to this being open and willing, I probably would have been in a similar place. Like, this guy's dangerous. I need to watch out for him and have the similar kind of resistance. I think it's understandable.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could add to that too, because I know that there was different things that we were doing that, I mean, even when we would talk about it, like you came from a place of you were very concerned. It wasn't something that you entered into lightly at all.
Concerned for myself.
Right,
because
that's what I mean. Yeah,
I was so, like my only experience with mind-altering substances is they all go one direction. It's down. Down and out and worse,
Yeah.
And then I was there and I was like, let's just do it.
Yeah. Mr. Party animal.
Me
I
and
was like, I'll
Salmon are like, sounds
Well, let's
like
just-
amazing.
Let's go. Let's do it right now.
Let's do it.
Do you have any? No? Okay.
Yeah.
But I will say that for Tyler, it wasn't something that I never saw Tyler enter into anything lightly. It was always something that was very, I know Tyler is. He was just very, very concerned about it. So it's just interesting. But go ahead.
And so for me, like, I understand the words that I use to disguise fear, because fear inherently doesn't want to look at itself. So concern is a word I use to describe fear. Worry is a word that I use to describe fear. And every time that I would talk about you in relation to psychedelics, it was always under this guise of like, I'm worried about my best friend getting with this guy who's going to relapse and ruin her life. I'm concerned for the safety of Mason. Like, just Ashley's son, if nobody knows that. So I had all of these worries and concerns, but what I really had was fears. And it was just all based in this, like, I don't understand, and I'm not open, and I'm not willing to look at my thinking. And once I started to kind of dismantle the belief systems around what was coming up for me, I was like, oh, actually, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not angry anymore. I'm open, and I'm still a no. I was still a no. It was like, because I had thought of ayahuasca, I had thought of, 5-MeO. I had thought of all of the ones that people in my community who I've worked in the spiritual community for a long time. I know hundreds of people who have done plant medicine. I know people who have done it 30 times just themselves. So it was not a foreign concept for me to interact with it, which was why him triggering me made me so perplexed, but the triggers are the guides. So that's where you had to go.
And you guys have a very similar background, and your personality is very similar.
We're
There's a
very
reason.
similar people.
There's a reason why, I love both of you guys so much.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
And so I'm sure most people don't know. I fasted for 30 days. I don't think I mentioned that last time I was on the podcast. I fasted for 30 days from November to December of last year. I did a water fast to improve my health because I have been...
Which is like unheard of. 30-day water fast.
I do not recommend doing that outside of a doctor's care. There's actually a Netflix documentary right now where you can watch people who have literally died from refeeding improperly. It's very dangerous. You have to do it with a doctor, which I did. I did it under my doctor's supervision. 30 days, just water, total spiritual experience, just doing that. But I did it with the intention of reversing my liver disease. That was the intent behind it. And healing a lot of the things that were going on in my body. After I did that, I had gotten blood work back, and my blood work was excellent. And within 6 weeks, my blood work started to fall off again. So I had been really in prayer and meditation about what's next for me. And I was driving the car one night, and I was driving home by myself, and I was just kind of praying, and I'm like, how much longer do I have to keep doing, right? Because the trauma responses and when you're in post-traumatic stress disorder, when you have severe PTSD, your body can never relax. If it can never relax, it disrupts your sleep cycles, it disrupts your digestion, it disrupts all of your normal anti-inflammatory processes.
It can't heal.
Your
It's
body
impossible.
can never heal. So you just become sicker and sicker and sicker because your body can't take a breath.
Yeah, you're in either rest or repair, or you're in fight or flight.
Fight or flight. And when I did the fast, the amazing thing for me was that was the first time I had gone into rest and repair in 5 years because I wasn't trying to force my body to digest any food. Because the first thing that happens when you go into fight or flight is it slows down your digestion. It's the very first thing it does. Mm-hmm. So roll on. I'm in the car, I'm praying. I'm like, what is next? Why? Like, can't not eat. That's not an option. I can't not eat forever. So, what do I do? And I ended up coming across a video, which has become a very famous video, and I think everyone.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
Because when you say, so you're going all through all this, and there's something that's obviously wrong, and for you it was showing up in the form of physical symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay, and for you, what was that? Like, was that the trauma being expressed through disease? Is that kind of how you understand it now, or?
So I just believe we're a whole car, right? You can't part yourself out. Like whatever's going on with you spiritually, it's going to affect you emotionally. It's going to affect your thoughts. It's going to affect your body. Your body's usually the last thing that produces the trauma, whatever it is.
Or symptoms.
The wound, yeah. So
Are you saying that like in the timeline of hurt, like the body is the last thing that
the wound always originates in the soul. The body's the last thing to translate the wound.
Okay.
So what had occurred for me was that I was having all of these symptoms like the liver disease, hyperthyroidism. My hormones were out of control, off the charts. I'm having an inability to lose weight. I've never had a problem with my weight in my life. I've struggled so much with my weight over the last 6 years. My hair fell out
And you were going about treating all these things as if you were a machine, and you needed to adjust the oil and twist the cog and make sure.
Was it a
On
very
some
literal
level.
aspect of like what you were doing? Like,
What do you mean?
well, like kind of what Tyler was talking about. Was there a lot of like, this is what it is, so I need to go into this? Like,
No, there was like, okay, I have to treat the body symptoms so they don't get worse, but also treat the soul.
Okay.
So I'm doing all the plain work. I'm doing the spiritual work, the mental, emotional work, and the physical work. There was actually like a video on Instagram. It was this girl. She's like, "You want me to heal my trauma, my pelvic floor, and something else, and my gut all at the same time? I need you to chill out." And I looked at my friend and I was like, "I'm literally doing all of those things right now." Like,
Those suck,
I was
huh?
literally in pelvic floor therapy, seeing a GI doc. Like, it was just, I was doing all of that. So I was, really trying to address everything, but I just kept feeling like I was missing the core. Like, I'm missing the core. And I couldn't get past this veil. And I was also having emotional symptoms. Like, for a couple of years, I was extremely emotionally volatile. And once I had worked through the emotional kind of psychological part of the trauma, what was left was all the body stuff. So like my son would drop a plate on the kitchen floor and I would shake for 3 hours. My husband would come home from work and forget he was telling me to come home, and I would shake for 3 hours. Like I couldn't be touched. I couldn't be hugged. If I had $1 over the last 6 years for every time I said, I'm sorry, I love you, but I can't be touched right now, I would be on a yacht somewhere. Wouldn't be here. So I'm driving down the street. This whole thing happens. I think it was that night, maybe the next night. I come across this very famous video of Joe Rogan talking to Andrew Huberman about Ibogaine.
I was going to say, was he talking about DMT?
He's talking about Ibogaine.
Okay.
I've never heard of Ibogaine before. This is a first for me, and I feel this calling, like that. That was the word. It was just that. And I was like, okay, what is that? I thought it was like a supplement or something.
So that is a good question. So can we dive into that a little bit?
We totally will.
Yeah.
So I started doing research, and I found out it was plant medicine, and it was from the Iboga shrub from West Africa, and it was used as a rite of passage for
By the Bwiti tribe.
Yep.
Yeah.
The coming of age ritual, essentially. And I did a lot of reading on it. It's pretty fascinating. There was actually a doctor named Dr. Marsh out of Florida who did an FDA clinical trial in Oregon of Ibogaine. You can do your own research as to why they shut that down, but let's just say it was because it was effective.
Yeah.
And they were doing it on post-war veterans, and what they were figuring out was after one treatment, it was completely obliterating,
Like the PTSD was completely reversed.
gone.
And is that also like true? I think I've heard it of meth addicts as well. Was that another one?
So
Or
actually, heroin addicts,
sorry.
fentanyl, heroin, any opioid.
Well, that's shown to be effective in
yeah.
all the pharmacology is really interesting in that it resets almost the whole dopaminergic
it does.
system to like before ever using anything.
It tends to work less effectively on people who have done cocaine and methamphetamines, but it's not ineffective. It's just less effective. There's something about the receptors that are not the same as someone who's used an opioid or has drank a lot of alcohol, like addictively.
Yeah, and it's a high effective rate. It's like what 60 to 70% one-time use.
It's 89%.
89%.
You see an 89% reduction in symptoms. The lowest,
which smashes any other
Any
treatment
pharmaceutical.
protocol ever.
right?
Yeah.
Any
The
pharmaceutical.
lowest, there's very few studies that you can actually gain access to, although it is legal in several other countries besides the United States. And there have been a decent amount of studies done. A lot of them are not published. And you can actually see it's typically between 76 and 89% are kind of the number range of how effective it is after the first use. Most people don't do it ever again. They do it one time, and that's all they need to do is just one time. So I began looking at centers, and it was a pretty hefty ask, right? Like we've done tens of thousands of dollars trying to heal myself. All myself.
Heal my whole self.
All my whole self.
Would it be, if I may, if you were to kind of whittle it down short, concisely, like what were some of the key traumas that, you think kind of, if maybe you're still in discovery, but could you, if you were to be able to whittle it down to a couple of them, what your traumas really were? So for those that maybe have this, can relate with you.
So there's two batches of traumas here. Okay. There's like the one that caused me to go, I've been diagnosed with PTSD multiple times in my life. So when I was 13 years old, I was beaten and left in a ditch. I've been sexually assaulted numerous times. I was forced to have an abortion when I was 16 years old. I was told by my father if I didn't get it taken care of, he'd cut it out. I had a boyfriend slit his wrists in front of me. So I had this whole batch of traumas in my teenage years, which I had spent years in therapy and in spiritual work, in various modalities with various practitioners, working toward, release. And I had found a lot of peace from those traumas. Like I was pretty good. But then when my mom went through her illness, she had a very traumatic death and she suffered for the course of 2 years, and her and I were incredibly close. That was a trauma I couldn't I have like,
That was the boulder that broke the camera.
I have
camel's
like
back.
literally a wall-to-wall Craftsman tool shed of like tools.
Yeah. Emotional. Yeah.
Emotional, spiritual.
Mindset.
And
My-
I
my-
can speak to that because you've helped me with a lot of stuff too, like tools.
Just so I'm just like a tool collector.
Well,
Like
words really can't describe the kind of power you bring to our community, Lauren.
that's sweet.
I really do mean it. It's apparent and obvious. If anybody were to just get to know you within the first 15 minutes, they would see it, and it's obvious.
Oh, thank you.
You
I
command a
appreciate
room. You
that.
know what you're doing.
Maybe I don't know. if I
Lauren's
know
one of the
anything.
few, and I'm gonna put myself out there, but Lauren is one of the few women that I've ever met in my life that she had my full attention, like within 5 or 10 minutes of meeting her. And I never do that because like women typically, you know, belong in a kitchen or having kids.
Barefoot and pregnant, making tortillas.
I was astounded because I was like, wow, this gal is sharp, man. Like she's on it, dude.
Thank you.
So yeah, I was very impressed.
Lauren and Halle Berry. Those are the only two that ever
Right,
had his
exactly.
full attention.
I'm right
Full attention.
here.
I know. You're the only woman who's ever gotten my full attention. Well, I don't even know what I was saying.
I'm sorry.
No, I love all that. I just got
You
so
were
heartwarmed.
kind of talking about your tool shed.
Oh
and
yeah,
having
so I
it-
got like all these tools, and then my mom dies, and like I might as well have had no tools, no experience, no wisdom, no knowledge of anything. It was like I was fragmented in such tiny shards. You know how when you break a glass, you like get a piece of bread and like pick up the shards of the bread.
You use
Or
a
I
piece
do a
of
wet
bread?
paper
Yeah,
towel.
Use
Is
a
that-
piece. No, use a piece of bread.
Is that a hack?
Really?
So much more gentle for your hands. You just go like this with a piece of bread. It picks up all the little shards. Well, I
I
was.
learned something
See,
today.
now,
There you go.
now
Last
some,
time it was
all our
changed.
audience now has something.
There
Yeah.
you go. You see, I gave everyone a takeaway. New tool.
Every time you come, we had change on the last one. If you have a nickel or a quarter, you can put
Stick
it on
it
the
to
side of
your
your head.
head.
It'll stay
Episode
there.
3.
Now,
Episode
if you
3.
have glass on the floor, you can just use a piece of bread.
There you go.
Boom.
So it was kind of like I just felt like I was just kind of going around in the dark trying to pick up the shards of myself like glass, and I don't know if it would have been any easier if someone had turned the light on, to be honest, because I was just so fragmented. And after all the work I'd done, and I'm just driving along in the car and I'm just praying, like, what's next? What's next? And I'm like, how long until I'm back to a place that looks like normal? And I get an instant 15 years.
This is what you're asking your
I'm just
higher
asking
power.
my higher power, like, how long? 15. I keep going the same way I'm going, hard and heavy. Like, I work on myself hard, like every day, significant amount of time and energy into, being and healing and being guided. 15 years. I'm like, my daughter's 4 and my oldest son is 15. So he'll be 30 and she'll be 19. I will have missed everything just trying to manage myself. I'm not a manager. Like, I don't want to be in that position. So when I started calling around looking for Ibogaine clinics, I talked to several of them. Of course, I was looking in Mexico, so there were international flights involved. They wanted to charge me the full price for the treatment almost everywhere I called, which is kind of crazy because I'm not coming in an addict. And typically, if you're coming into a facility for Ibogaine as an addict, you have to go through a detox process, and you have to pay a lot to go through the detox process. Again, 100% worth it because you don't walk away with any withdrawal symptoms. You have this rapid healing. You still have to do all the
That's
work.
really the Ibogaine's, one of the unique pharmacologies about Ibogaine is it goes in and restores the opiate receptors to pre-use.
Yep.
And so for many of those who go in to treat their opioid addiction, there's been stories of 30-year heroin addicts go in, one treatment, come out of it the next day, didn't have a withdrawal symptom, and because
Never
of the
wanna touch it
profound
again.
psychedelic effect, all of a sudden regard that as like the worst decision they could possibly make and are never drawn to it again. But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's and that it's amazing and it's miraculous, but for me that was not what I needed. So Anyway, I landed on this clinic called Experience Ibogaine in Rosarito, and
You're saying that you didn't need a withdrawal detox thing.
I didn't need a withdrawal.
But you did
detox
need
thing.
something miraculous.
I needed something miraculous.
Did you get like, because you know the places that you were calling obviously were like places that probably specialize in detox, and were you like, did it ever make you kind of like laugh that you were calling these places and you were like, no, I don't need a detox, I'm fine? And they were like, sure you don't, honey.
It's so funny.
We need you to come in
It's
so you
so
can
funny.
detox.
We got a lot
okay?
of people like
I
you.
felt like I literally felt like my higher power had to draw it just that way. Like, no, the first psychedelic you get to have experience with is the one that is used to treat addiction, because it gave me this inherent sense of safety that I wasn't going to walk away having woken up the beast.
Got it.
The addiction.
And I've watched so many other people peak chase. And part of my addiction is being an adrenaline junkie. Like, what's the next excitement, right? What crazy ass thing can I do right now? And so, you know, just watching other people in that spiritual community peak chase, it was very scary to me. And so getting introduced to Ibogaine, understanding how it worked, understanding it was used to actually treat addiction, gave me this like, okay, like this is not going to put me or my family in jeopardy.
Yeah, and with the safety of doctors and
I'm in a clinical facility. There's
Yeah.
doctors. They give you EKGs. You run labs. I mean, it's a whole thing.
But this isn't like a back alley in Mexico where you meet like a
No.
Paco and he gets you whatever it is. This was
No,
legit, right?
but there is a dog named Poncho.
Okay.
And he's real cute. So it was pretty interesting. I called the intake coordinator, and I had just kind of called and asked every center about the same questions, you know, and this guy and I end up on the phone for 2 hours.
Oh, that's cool.
And I felt so seen and so heard and so cared about, and he asked me lots of questions and he really listened to me. And what made this center different than every other center is that pretty much every other center was like, what ailments do you have? It's going to heal you. And, you know, this guy was like, I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to experience a miracle. And I have no idea what that looks like. I can't promise you it's going to heal your liver disease. I can't promise you it's going to balance your thyroid. I can't promise you it's going to make your hair stop falling. I can't promise you any of that. Because what it does is it does what it needs to do. And
That's been our experience
Same,
with
yeah, I was
these medicines.
just gonna
Yeah.
say that.
you can't tell it what you,
can't
need.
tell it. No, this is not Burger King. You cannot have it
You
your
don't
way.
have it your way,
No.
man.
So it was just so interesting because I felt like, wow, I actually got like solid information. Like this is really legit. So I said, yeah, I'm in. And they weren't going to charge me the detox price. They were going to charge me an experience price, which they have, even though this facility specifically focuses on addicts. They had an experience price that was not, it was for people who wanted to come have the experience or for people who struggle with PTSD. So I got a chance to talk to the doctor before I went down, which was great. He answered all my questions. He had me do a lab draw with my primary care doctor so he could see those results before I came down. I got there, you know, they did all the stuff. They actually found out that I have an abnormality in one of my heart valves. So they took me to a cardiologist who runs another Ibogaine clinic and has done 15 years of Ibogaine-related cardiology. And he gave me an all clear. And then I was kind of set for the experience. So Experience Ibogaine is my shameless plug.
Big shout out. Huh?
They're literally the most loving people. The doctor, the nurses, the owners, Poncho.
You said that's Experience Ibogaine.
Experience Ibogaine. They're literally the most wonderful people.
We'll have to send them this podcast.
I
that'd be
even
good.
was like, man, I'm going to be in Mexico and not have tacos. And the owner's like, I'll take you to tacos. So her and the other owner, her life partner, they took me to tacos, which is really fun.
Were the tacos good?
The tacos were so good. They were
awesome.
wood grilled meat. I know, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you want to know about the experience? Ask me all the things.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I kind of want to, like, what is it like? Like, what were some concerns when you were at that point where you're like, okay, here we go. Like, what was going on in your mind? Like, that was kind of my question. I don't know.
that's a great question. I want to know, what were you nervous? Like, what were the emotions you were
Because
having
we all
leading up
know
to it?
you, and I had to talk to you about different things.
Well,
and you were like,
I know Lauren, and that she'll never admit when she's nervous.
You know,
she's all, fuck you, Tyler. about
She's like,
that."
you're right.
I really want to
wasn't
say
nervous.
I really want to say I was nervous, but actually, I wouldn't call it nervous. I would say that what I was I was afraid it wouldn't work. I wasn't nervous about the experience. I was nervous about it not working.
Were you afraid of relapsing after it as well?
No, 100% not.
So you were
That's
just like, this
awesome.
is going to be a giant waste of fucking time.
I was just like, oh my God, if my husband dumped all this money into one more thing that just made me marginally better, I'm going to walk off a cliff. Like, we could have bought rental properties with the money that I've spent trying to put my whole ass self back together. So I really just felt like I didn't want to let my family down, and I wanted to get something really profound out of it. And a lot of the times what I've learned in doing work is that the more attached you are to getting something profound, the less profound it is. So I was doing a lot of like, I'm committed, but I'm unattached. I'm committed, but I'm unattached.
Which is like trying not to try.
Yes, basically.
I'm going to try
Basically.
hard.
I'm going to try not to try. I know. So your mindset is, I hope this isn't a waste of time.
I hope this isn't a waste of time.
And so what's the process? They like wheel you in like you're.
So it's pretty crazy. So you go the first day, like day one, you get all your labs done. They check your EKG.
You flew into Mexico. They picked you up from the airport.
No, I didn't fly into
right?
Mexico.
You drove
So
to-
one of the big
That's
perks
right.
about this was I got to
How
fly
about
into
that,
San
actually?
Diego.
That's right.
That's right on the border.
Yeah, it's right on the border. It's 40 minutes away from the border. So they have the intake coordinator is also the guy who picks you up from the airport. So that was really great for me because I got to be with the man who, of course, his name was Michael.
Of course, his name was
All
Michael.
the
Of
Michaels
course it
in
is.
my life. I'm gonna
We have a lot of Michaels.
I
right
need
now.
to write a book called All the Michaels because if you only knew. So he
The Archangel.
and all the ex-husbands. So he showed up and he picked me up from the airport, which is great. And when I got to deepen my connection with him as we drove back to the facility, they did all the check-in stuff. They did all my blood work, my EKG, all the things. And then they took me to my room. And my room was really, there's two houses. There's a treatment house and a house that you put the guests in. Some people do stay in the treatment house. I stayed in the other house, and I got to have my own bathroom, my own balcony, which was really nice. So I had lots of space and time to myself. Day 2 is the day that they administered the medication. So they had to take me to the cardiologist first to make sure, which kind of prolonged how long it took to administer the medication. But I spent most of the day doing like Joe Dispenza heart coherence meditations. I didn't have the TV on. I was just really in a place of surrender. Like just whatever is meant for me here will be here for me.
See, I would have, if by you telling me that, I would have guessed you'd done a lot of psychedelics.
Oh God.
Because that's pro psychedelic.
I've just done
It's
a
like
lot of work.
101.
I've just done a lot
Is
of
that
work.
what you're saying?
That's
like
psychedelic. Yeah, you want to
101?
get into that spot, that place, that peace, that surrender. Yeah. it's
Well,
good.
and I will say that I had constructed an aftercare plan. Apparently, out of like 2,500 patients, I'm one of 3 who showed up with an aftercare plan. But I just know when you have a big growth experience, you have to have integration and support, and that's just part of it, right? And I got to meet with the therapist. They have a therapist who visits you twice while you're there. And then I met this incredible ex-combat veteran who is a psychedelic integration life coach. And we ended up spending 3 hours sitting by the ocean talking about life. So before I get into the experience, I feel like I need to talk about militia.
Yes.
Yeah, I
please
really
do.
do.
Please do.
So over the course of my life, I've done these exercises with either healers, psychotherapists, different practitioners of some kind, where you go into a meditative state. I've even done this in hypnosis. You go into the seat of your soul, and you sit with, the seat of my soul is a 70s drug house with pit furniture.
Yeah,
That
totally.
is the seat of my soul.
That's cool.
Bean bags.
You're wearing my pants.
Orange pit furniture. Everybody's wearing. It's just really it's a drug den. It's the seat of my soul.
Sounds like a party.
Sounds like a party. So we go into this room, and all of the aspects of myself are embodied. There's like, think of like God, what's that movie? Inside Out, right?
Okay, yeah.
Except they all look like various versions of me, and there's like this little librarian looking chick, and then there's like
Is she wearing glasses?
she's wearing glasses, and she's got bangs, bad choice, but she has those. And, tight bun at the top. And, then there's like the dancer version of me. And there's all these different versions. And then there's Militia. And Militia looks like me, except she's almost 6 feet tall.
That's Melissa spelled with a T.
Militia.
Right. Okay.
Like militant.
Like
Right, I was going
militant.
to say like militia, the word for military.
Yes.
Right.
The word for military.
I'm getting that.
And so she's broad-shouldered. She's super buff. She's got sleeves. She wears black aviator glasses and an earpiece, a wife beater, camo pants, big belt buckle, and she's got weapons in places that you can't see. They're just everywhere. And then she has a big-ass gun. Endless ammo on this big-ass gun. The problem with Militia is, so she's super useful, right? Like, she comes out during trauma. She keeps me safe. She protects me.
Yeah, you're proud of Militia.
She is
She
so...
gets it done.
She's a fucking badass, dude. She's pulled me out of literal ditches. She has saved my life so many times. The problem is when my mom died, she got like stuck in go mode, and the psychedelic life coach actually gave this like beautiful, like we were talking about her, and he was like, so, because he's a combat veteran, so he's like,
Right.
so it's like you're in Moscow, but the trauma happened in like Kuwait, but like she's got the car doors on the Escalade locked, and she's like, I'm going to get you to safety. And you're like, that's not happening right now. That was 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how she operates. Like, she's just always trying to keep me safe. So in my life, she shows up in the front of everything. Like, she shows up as invulnerability and, being withdrawn in this kind of weird way and combativeness and defensiveness so that she can test the waters and make sure she can keep me safe. Even talking about her just brings all this tension into my body because she's such a big part of my energy.
I can kind of feel that too.
You feel that?
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the good side of that is how you're an extremely effective person.
Well, and
Like, you
also
should-
I'm
yeah.
not dead. Like, I should be dead. I just thought of like 3 more traumas I didn't even talk about. Like, I should be dead, really. So Militia, I've been trying to get her to go. And in all these different situations, I sit down with her in the seat of my soul and I'm like, I love you. Thank you for keeping me alive. We're okay. We're safe. It's okay. You can just chill now. Like, take a
unlock the doors.
sabbatical.
We're good.
Take a nap. Yeah.
Take a sabbatical. Here's some Benadryl. Go to bed. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
relax.
know. Here's the melatonin. Here's a roofie. Like, I don't know what she would need. Just like go to sleep.
Because you've given her all these other things, and
Here's
she's
some-
still awake.
She's like,
Yeah.
God.
Here's some Ibogaine.
Here's some Ibogaine. So I'm talking to Chris about this, and I'm like, the hard part for me is that I feel like I've done all the emotional, spiritual work, but I can't get her like out of my cells. Like, and I know she doesn't get to go away. She's a useful part of me, but like I need her to just chill. Let me drive the car. And he looked at me and he said the most profound thing I think any other human has ever said to me. And he said, "Are you ready to be radically healed and have no explanation for how that happened?" And I said, yeah, I am. He said, because you're not going to understand. You can talk about the mechanics, but like, you really don't understand how it happened. I'm like, okay. So I went back to my room, did the meditation, waited. They don't wheel me anywhere. They walked me to the treatment house.
I have this scene in my head where like everything's
And
white.
I'm like in a
and
hospital
you're
gown.
in a gown.
No,
and,
not
they
even.
Wheel you,
I mean,
and
it's
they
a very clean
give you the thing,
environment,
you know?
and everybody's in hospital attire because it's clinical, but it doesn't feel like a hospital. It feels
No.
very warm, and everybody's very warm. So they take me to the treatment house. So there's 2 nurses. There's nighttime Jonathan and there's daytime Jonathan.
Are they both named Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay. Very
I mean,
cool.
there's more nurses than that, but
Oh.
but
I think in Rosarito,
Everybody's
the
name
names
is
are
Jonathan.
Wanathan.
yeah,
Is it
Jonathan.
Wanathan?
So Jonathan is like, nighttime Jonathan is there. He takes me into the room. They sage the room. They Palo Santo the room. They
I'm sorry.
light
He's
some candles.
retarded. I'm so sorry.
Siren can't stop laughing.
Daniel's dying.
Daniel's red. Can we? Too bad we can't show that. You are red.
That was one for the boys right there. He's like,
For me, it's a
Ashley and I are just like,
Wanathan.
okay, Jonathan.
I just
Wanathan,
completely ignore it. Just like doesn't even
they're on
faze me.
face. They kept going.
We did.
I think
We're
we
just
have, we have a
like,
few
okay.
guys in our audience. They can appreciate it.
So I get into the room.
So Jonathan was with you.
Nighttime Jonathan took me in. The doctor visited me. Really lovely guy. And he's like, just, he's just such a sweet man. He's like, just surrender. And the way he tells you to surrender is like, he doesn't say surrender. What he kept saying to me was humble yourself to the medicine. Humble yourself. Like, don't try to run the show, basically. I'm like, oh, you've met militia, huh? So I had heard, don't recommend, by the way. I read like a million people's experiences. So now I have a construct of what I want to happen.
Right.
Dumb.
Don't do that.
The less you know, the better, for
The
sure.
less you know, the better. But I had heard on repeated occasions that like you go in and Ibogaine is called the stern grandfather. It's a very masculine medicine and it reviews all your traumas. That's what I've heard. So I'm like, first dosage, I'm very resistant to psychedelics. I will say that, first of all. So they gave me the appropriate dosage for my height and weight. And then they had to give me quite a bit more because I was not having an experience.
And is this interesting to note? Is because I know it's true of like 5-MeO and DMT and other plant medicines. You can't overdose on this, correct?
No.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Ibogaine's one of the few that did. There are a couple of risks, right?
There are some risk factors associated with cardiovascular health. So if you
Okay.
have heart problems, Ibogaine is not your medicine.
Gotcha.
And they do have to be careful how much they give you. There are maximums because it is lawful in those countries to administer it. So they have parameters for how it
Got
can be
it,
medically
okay.
administered. So I had received the maximum dosage, and thankfully that did produce an experience.
Okay.
What was so interesting for me was that I didn't know I was having an experience because what was happening in my experience is what happens when I close my eyes all the time. Like in meditation, I see very vivid things. So I didn't understand I was having an experience at first.
And we've kind of talked about that as well. It's like just monumentally awesome things or
Yeah.
profound things or big things, are a regular occurrence for
regular
you as well.
occurrence for me. So first Jonathan comes in and he's like, "Are you tripping?" And I'm like, "No, but my lips are buzzing."
So can you describe, like, well, for those of our of us
Or just for
who've
us.
done
I mean, how
psychedelics,
about
right?
that?
When you was there a like what kind of imagery?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or at
so,
what point were you like, hey, this is working or whatever it is?
Oh, well, so I was just having kind of normal imagery, which is kind of like I'm in the spirit world and things are processing. It's that piece is a little difficult to describe because that is kind of a normal personal experience for me. It's kind of a combination between just like dream travel and like astral projection, where I see a lot of different things. I'm in a lot of different places all at one time.
And well, when I hear you say, I couldn't tell I was tripping because this is just normal for me. Was there if there was a difference? I mean, there had to have been some sort of
So I'll tell you what
difference, right?
happened is
Okay.
Ibogaine showed up. He
Okay.
showed up. He physically came on the scene
like as an entity.
as an entity. Square toe black boots, tight biker
Like
jeans.
pilgrim boots,
No, like biker boots.
biker boots.
He had faded denim biker jeans on, big black belt, tight black t-shirt tucked in, short military cut, black Ray-Bans.
He was not there to fuck around.
He was not there to fuck around. He also had a watch on, so he was timely.
It seems like he's almost like an opposite of what you described as your militia. Like he's
Like
So
you
he
needed
shows
someone
up-
as big as militia.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny when Tyler and I had originally talked about Ibogaine. He's like, it's a very masculine medicine. It brought tears to my eyes because I'm like, of course, because I've survived a lot more than most people. I'm not going to say everybody. There are definitely people who've had worse traumas than I have, but I have survived a lot more than most people have. I needed something grittier and more masculine than me to come put Militia in check because nobody can fuck with her. She's survived a lot. So when he shows up, here I am. I'm like, I'm ready to review my traumas. And he's like, I'm not here for that. Like, what do you mean you're not here for that? It's like, you've already done that. I don't need to do that. So what are you here for? So he fades and he comes back on a Harley and he says, I'm here for her. And he throws her on the back of the Harley and he leaves.
Militia.
Yep. Throws Militia like a rag doll on the back of the Harley and he leaves. And I say out loud to the room that no one's in, that was anticlimactic.
It's funny. It's never what you think.
All
it is.
that fucking work and he just
like,
throws
get outta
this
here, man.
bitch on the back of a Harley and leaves. Like, you gotta be shitting me.
Slap
And
her
so
on the
this
ass as we
experience,
throw
was
her.
it dreamlike? Did you feel like you were in your body? Was it just imagery
No,
in the
you
mind?
totally feel like you're in your body. When you open your eyes, so the candles are flickering, right? So it does cause a little bit of a sensation, but you don't hallucinate with your eyes open. It really is like a very vivid daydream, or if somebody's familiar with astral projection or any kind of deep meditative imagery, that's really what it feels like. You just close your eyes and it appears, you open your eyes and it's gone, right? So you lose all track of time and space, which I think is very normal for any plant medicine.
Right.
So then I'm just laying there and I have all these scenarios from my life that seem to hold no real significance, playing on loop. And then all of a sudden I start hearing a man talking, and I actually thought it was somebody in the hallway for probably an hour. I thought he was in the hallway. And then I realized after that hour he was in my subconscious. And I couldn't make out anything he was saying. And he was probably there for a few hours. And then all of a sudden, when I realized he was in my subconscious and my awareness moved to my subconscious, I could feel him filing through my brain and pulling out belief systems and patterns and movie quotes and then song lyrics. And here's what's so trippy about this. He starts pulling out a song and he's pulling it out like at this very slow rate. It's kind of nice to be on video because people see my hands. It's like very slow rate like this. And then I start bopping to the song, right? Like I'm singing it. Oh, I love this song.
What song was it?
And then he starts ripping the songs out so I can't re-solidify them into my subconscious, like super warp speed fast. Like, so they sound like, remember when you used to take an old cassette? Yeah. I can't remember what the song was.
Wow.
And in my head, when he started to pull that song out, I went,
You recognize
this is this song by that artist, and started singing it.
Love
and
this
now
song.
Cannot tell you what that song was. I have tried so hard to remember.
Wow.
It's gone, whatever it was. A lot of Eminem came out. There was some rap in there. A lot of rap.
New go.
Could you say you were cleaning out your closet?
Tonight I was cleaning out my closet.
I have no snare in my headphones. There is no snare.
I'm just glad I even got that reference right now. 'Cause never been a.
Sorry, go ahead.
fan.
You
Go
set
ahead.
me
that
up
was
for
awesome.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff came out, and then that was concluded. And then again, all this imagery on loop. But now the imagery on loop, first of all, it was so weird because the only two I can really remember are the first one, which was someone's butt, like in jeans. And like I was a little kid and I was standing somewhere and someone's butt was in my face. That was like the first of all the imagery loops. And the last one.
Was there any significance there?
No, like not to my knowledge. Right, there's got to be some significance, but
Maybe
it's
it was
not.
the first time you noticed a butt.
Maybe.
Like,
I am an ass girl. Maybe.
Butt trauma.
It was the first time somebody like farted in my proximity.
Damn.
I don't know.
Damn.
And then the last image was a train exploding into a hot dog and exploding into a stuffed horse that my daughter owns. And then they would all just play on loop, like boom, boom. And then after about, I don't know, let's say 30 minutes of that, I literally just said, in my head, I said, okay, I'm done. And it was over. And I talked to some other people who have experienced it, and they've all said that when you say, I'm done, it's over. So then nighttime Jonathan comes back in to check on me.
When you say that you said I'm done, was that like a conscious decision, or was it deeper than just where you usually make decisions? Was it
no,
like this?
you
like
feel very in control of your normal cognitive thought. Like you can direct what you want. You can ask it, can we look at this? Can we look at that? Doesn't mean you're going to get your way. But you can direct the thinking toward this. At one point, I even said, how do I love my husband? And that same dude, Grandpa Ibogaine, his head comes floating out of the blackness straight up to my face with a baseball cap on. And he looks up and screams at me, you already know how.
Right.
And then he puts his head down, he looks back up, and it's my husband's face. And I was just like, oh, okay.
It's so simple.
So simple. Like, I already know. Like, why am I asking these questions? The thing that's blocking me is militia, right? I can't, it's hard to be loving and protect yourself at the same time. You can't do that.
You can't do it. You can't be vulnerable and invulnerable.
Yeah. I'm going to defend against you, but come here. So, you know, when I just said I was done, I just felt like I had gotten what I came there for. So nighttime Jonathan comes in and he's like, are you tripping? And I'm like, he's so cute. I just
Is
love
that
him.
how he said it?
Are you tripping?
Are you tripping?
And I'm like, no, I'm done. And he goes, go to sleep. just go sleep. He's like, you're done? I'm like, I'm done. So apparently my experience is only about 7 hours long.
So did this whole thing that you just told us about, was that 7 hours?
Yeah,
of that?
it was
Okay.
over the course of 7 hours.
Okay.
A
But to
lot
you,
of,
it's not that long though, right?
No, oh God, it felt like 30 minutes.
Okay.
And a lot of the work was in my subconscious and I was unaware of what was actually happening.
Oh, of
because
course.
it's just reprogramming
Yeah,
everything in
cleaning
your
house.
for about a day after, sometimes even 2 to 3 days after you do Ibogaine, you continue to interact with the medicine when you're asleep. So the next day I slept about 18 hours on purpose. A lot of people will have trouble sleeping after Ibogaine, but I think just because of my history with drugs in my teens and 20s, it didn't have the same effect on me, so I was able to sleep for a considerable amount of time. Can I tell a story about my mom? Should I tell a story about my mom?
You can talk
what-
about
please,
whatever you want.
Please do.
Because we're covering both of your experiences here, right? So
Yeah, totally.
So I think some context will be important. So that was the end of the Ibogaine experience, right?
Right, but then during the 18 hours of sleep the next day, I kept experiencing interaction with Ibogaine, as I knew I would because I was told that. Ibogaine continues to work on healing your neurology 4 to 6 months after your experience. So it's different than other plant medicines in that regard. It doesn't stop when the experience stops. It continues to heal your brain. And you continue to have interactions with it pretty intensely for a couple of days for some people. Mine was about 24 hours. So I'm in my mom's house in one of my dreams, in my experience with my dream Ibogaine experience. I'm in my mom's house. My brother and my dad are there. I'm estranged from my brother and my dad. They're both not very well people, and I love them very much, but it's not a healthy situation. And my mom walks in the door. I'm like, what are you doing here? And she's like, I've been here the whole time. And
Yeah,
I'm
and
like,
your mom is passed.
you haven't heard this yet, have you? I said, what do you mean you've been here the whole time? And she said, I'm just here and nobody talks to me and no one comes to see me, but I'm here. I'm like, well, where are you staying? She's like, I had to get my own place. And she showed me her place was like this tiny cramped room with like stuff to the ceiling, and she's sleeping on this tiny mattress. And I'm like, why don't you come home? She's looked at me and she said, Lauren, I can't come home. And then Ibogaine is like, you are keeping your mom between the physical and the spiritual. She's stuck in limbo by herself. And I said, but don't you want to see Cadence, my daughter? Because she never met my daughter. But she told me 2 weeks before she died that I was going to have a little girl. And I found out a month to the day after she died I was pregnant with Cadence.
Wow.
So I said, don't you want to meet Cadence? And she's like, Lauren, I can't. I'm not supposed to meet her. So
This is in the dream, right?
I wake up and I know Ibogaine has told me that I need to let her go. And so I start telling her, like in the dream, I'm telling her before I wake up, like, you can go, it's okay. And then she's like, it's not that simple. Boom, I wake up. I'm like, what the hell? Like, you just told me that I'm keeping you in purgatory and like I can't just tell you to go. And then I wake up. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? So I was really praying and meditating on it. A couple of days go by. 5-MeO is part of the experience they offer there. 5-MeO and Ibogaine are...
Simon says, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's our medicine.
They're
but
yin and yang.
they're incredibly synergistic. It's really crazy how synergistic those two specific medicines are. A lot of people, you know, in the professional world, when you talk to them at these facilities and they talk about the way Ibogaine and 5-MeO interact, they'll describe it as no two other plant medicines can have that relationship that those two have. It's pretty incredible. Are you going to do the 5-MeO? Well, I had been on the fence about the 5-MeO the whole time.
Because we had talked about it
Because
as
Tyler
well.
said 5-MeO is great, so therefore.
Therefore, it's shit.
We
I
know
must
therefore-
always be in opposition.
I will say this though, like we had talked about like my experiences with 5-MeO, so I feel like I had a push in that. I'll insert myself into your story because
Please do.
I had shared my 5-MeO experience with you, and I feel like that was a positive aspect because
Yeah, she said it was.
Well, and let's clarify too. 5-MeO DMT. It's nicknamed the God molecule. It is known as the world's most powerful psychedelic. The experience of which is completely ineffable. It's hard to even put into words, but that's what you're going to attempt to do for us today.
Yeah. So
Good luck.
So thanks for doing the impossible. It was a big deal for me to actually have that. We just have such a beautiful connection. Tyler and I have to work on we have to work.
which is so
together.
weird because me and you always had like when I walked into this house, you were standing right there, and I
It's like
instantly connected
this.
with you. I was like, I like her.
See,
Yeah.
Lauren, the only reason is because I want to see you be vulnerable with me, and I feel
That
like
is
I'm up
true.
against your militia,
Yeah.
militia a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ever since I came home, I feel like I've been really vulnerable with you.
You have more than I've ever seen you. Like you pouring and getting emotional, and like the way you have. To me, it's like I can really vibe with you now.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can know you. It's like
Yeah.
we are so much more of our emotions.
Well,
than
no one
everything else.
could know me when militia is in the driver's seat. That's the point.
Yeah, and you know me, like because I'm like you. I'm willing to show up with a hammer and start knocking on the door.
Yeah.
You know, like if I get that sense. Like, I'm an asshole.
You know what's so funny is like most people wouldn't even recognize that in me, truly, because I do so much spiritual work with people that I get vulnerable in order to create permission for them to get vulnerable. But because it's so I don't want to say it's performative, but it kind of is. It's not insincere.
It's just
I've done
instinctual.
it
It's like
so
what you do.
many
Yeah.
times that there's no real vulnerability in it for me.
it's easy for you to
Because
talk
I'm
about
doing
deep
it-
things.
Well,
yeah.
sure, and I'm
yeah.
doing it because I love and honor the person in front of me, and I want them to know they're safe, right? So I share with them so they can share with me, and that's really kind of the crux of why it's easy for me to get vulnerable in that space, which is very different than like sitting with a group of your friends and crying because of something you're currently going through.
Right.
Most of my vulnerability is past tense.
Yes,
Right. It's
exactly.
bringing it back
It's
up.
the
Yes.
things
Yeah.
I've already walked
Yeah.
through. It's like, I had this really hard experience where I was, XYZ'd, and this is what came up for me, and this is how I worked. And they're like, oh my God, yes. Well, it's current for them. It's not for me.
Yeah, there's this instinct in me because I can tell that you have so much depth and trauma and so much, but what you do is present everything you've done to cope with that. And for me, there's this instinct for me to just want to hold the child that's in there,
Yeah.
and so when you show up with militia, there's this, I think what maybe that's where this instinct for me is coming from. It's like, I
course.
want to actually
You want to
see
love
the
on my
child.
inner child.
Yes, exactly.
And my inner child, I had done so much reparenting and inner child work before my mom got sick. And when my mom got sick, I had this repeated vision of this little girl sitting in her jellies, remember jellies, on the corner of the street that I grew up on, which is where my mom died, the house my mom died in. And I lived a street away from her when she passed away. So on the corner between our two houses, this little girl is sitting with her knees up to her chest, dirty faced, tears streaming down her face, waiting for her mom to show up. She's just waiting. She just doesn't understand why her mom won't show up. It's deeply painful. And I feel like Ibogaine was the first time that I could sit next to that little girl and say, it's okay that she's not coming because I'm here. I'm here. And I'm not her, and I'll never be her. And I will miss her, and you will miss her, and it's still okay.
Yeah.
And when I, came up against 5-MeO, like the nurse came in, she's like, you gonna do it? I'm like, oh God, all the resistance in the world, right? Like, so I know I have to do it because all the resistance comes up. And and I'm not telling this part of the story to run away from the emotion, but to run into it. The owner comes up and she knocks on the door, and she opens the door and she's like, "Are you going to do the 5-MeO?" I'm like, "I don't know." And she just kind of cocks her head at me, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to do it." Of course you're going to do it. And she goes, and the nurse comes in.
It's like, I love it because a bunch of drug dealers.
Of course you're going to do it.
Open your mouth.
You know, and I'm scared. I'm genuinely scared because well, first of all, I don't need a hug from God. I just want to tell you that.
Okay.
Like, I don't need to be hugged by the universe. I'm good.
Okay.
That's my thinking.
That's how she was. That's how she
you were
was
thinking.
talking
Which is
about
so
5-MeO.
silly. Like,
We're
why
like,
wouldn't you want that or need
she's like,
that?
I have a great relationship with God. I'm like, yes, but don't you want to meet him in person?
Well, here's the deal, though. There's a difference between the relation. So the relationship I have with God and the relationship I had with 5-MeO, there are so many crossovers for me because of the depth of my experience in regular life. And also, what occurred for me with 5-MeO has forever changed everything about my life, because Ibogaine went in like a hacker and took all the shit out of the system that didn't belong there. Okay? I was administered 5-MeO in 3 rounds. Really serene experience. They put me in the middle of my bed. She put me in the middle of my bed. She played this gorgeous music. She really prepared me emotionally, mentally, physically. I was in, this really peaceful space. She administered the first dose, which was just the introduction to my body to know it was safe. And I just had a very peaceful meditation. I don't know how long that lasted, maybe 10, 20 minutes. But I was just really in a meditative state. I felt this sense of disconnection from my arms and my upper body. But she had warned me that a lot of people who do 5-MeO may initially feel like they can't breathe. Well, I do breath work, so I just was diaphragm breathing so that I wouldn't experience any of that fear, because I wanted to just be in the experience. So the second round comes, and I literally walk my mom back to God. And I just tell her that I love her. And, for the 6 years that she's been gone, I've just had this bitterness in my soul that I'm never going to be loved like that again. And in the moment I handed her back, all I could feel was so grateful I had ever been loved like that earthside. Ever.
Yep.
Because most people I know, like literally almost everyone I know, has a huge mom wound. Like their mothers didn't show up for them or couldn't show up for them. And I had a mom who stood in the fire with me my whole life. She stood in the fire with me, and she loved me unconditionally. She loved me when it was unpopular. And she loved who I was. She never parented the child she wanted. She parented the child she had. When I was 13 and I said, I want to move to another country and go meet my dad and blah, blah, blah. And she knew who my dad was. And she told me, you know who your dad is, right? I want to go because I hate you and blah, blah, blah. And she was such a prayer warrior. She just said, I have to let you go. I have to let you go see your dad and figure this out. So many people judged her. So many people were hard on her about that decision. And she gave me exactly what I needed. I have never and will never again experience a love like her on this side of existence. And I no longer feel like that is somehow a loss.
A bad thing.
Yeah.
You got to experience
Because I was
it.
so freaking cheated before 5-MeO. I felt cheated. I never for a second, people would say, I wish I had a mom like your mom. And I'd be like, ugh, right. So that you can lose her and be wounded like I'm wounded. Right? Like, just this really bitter bitch kind of situation.
Because you're unable to see that it's okay to be grateful for it. Like
even though like conceptually, very grateful for her.
Right. But there's an emotional aspect that you
Was
don't tie to
completely
that. Yeah.
not existent for
You're
me.
only seeing half of the whole.
Half of the whole.
Right.
So the third round of 5-MeO is obviously just the one where the only way I can describe it is that you for an instant, a literal instant, you feel at complete harmony with everything there ever was and ever is and ever could be. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I just had this knowing. Well, after the second round, I cried from my soul for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Just the depth of my soul. I just cried and cried and cried. And the nurse had told me before she administered it, the medicine will take you where you need to go, but you have to allow it to come through. Mm-hmm. If you don't process it out of your body, you're going to pull it right back in. You just have to let it process how it needs to, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
Did you experience any resistance to that? Sorry.
No, just we have a lot of examples of how radical the medicine, because it becomes so apparent and obvious that what's happening is on an energetic level, on a so deep, like behind all the physical stuff, and so there's this
Behind the
expression
intellect.
through the physical, whatever that looks like, and we've had many wild examples. I mean, my experiences have varied tremendously, crying being one of them.
Crying, laughter,
Laughter,
looking
all sorts,
like
yeah.
a possession. You
Yeah.
know,
So
I mean,
I
it
had
could
all
really.
of that actually. So
Yeah.
the second round was a lot of crying, deep guttural crying. Here's what's so interesting: how this all ties into my physical body. In Chinese medicine and following the teachings of a woman named Louise Hay, anger, this liver is the seat of anger. In both of those modalities, Chinese medicine and Louise Hay's work. Everybody was saying to me since my mom died, "You're so angry, you're so angry, you're so angry." I will honestly tell you, I was never experiencing a sensation of anger. That is the God's honest truth. Most of the time people would tell me I was angry, I was not feeling angry whatsoever. And when I started to cry after that second round, a wave just came over me. Because I have probably said in my time training and coaching and mentoring people 1,000,000 times that anger is fermented grief. I have said that out of my mouth. I don't even know, so many times. And it was in that moment that I heard myself reverberate back to me, "You're not angry, you're sad." And I just let the grief just come up and out as much as I could. I didn't try to interrupt it. When the moments would lull where I wasn't crying anymore, I just waited for the next wave to come, and I didn't interrupt it. I just surrendered into it. So then the third round comes, and you have that harmonious moment. And then suddenly I'm just overwhelmed with this knowing that for me to intend to recreate the kind of love my mother and I had with anybody else would be like extreme codependency, and it would be incredibly destructive for whoever I tried to create it with, number one. And number two, that was a gift given to me by God so I could understand a glimpse of the depth of love that my higher power has for me. And so I could carry that love for all the people who have never experienced the love of a mother out into the world.
It really touches me because of how much of a mother you are to our community. Yeah. Like we have a huge gathering of beautiful people, and you show up with this energy that it just seems so boundless, and the way you nurture and provide and encourage in this way. It's a thing of God. I don't know how else to describe it.
Because that's how my mother loved me. You know, my mother loved me like there was no way I could hide anything from my mother. Like she would feel something in me and she would call it forth. There was no not getting vulnerable with her. There was no hiding my pain from her. She would pull it out of me. In fact, it's so funny when she was, after she passed away, one of her high school friends who became a pastor, he came up from the San Diego area to officiate her funeral. And he told a story about how when he was in the ministry in the beginning, she noticed that there was some stuff he wasn't dealing with on a personal, emotional level. So she gave him a phone call and said, we need to talk about the state of your spirit. That's who my mother was. Mm-hmm. And I am my mother's daughter.
Oh, yeah. You called me up and had a conversation with me this morning like that.
It doesn't always,
which I love.
It doesn't always make you the popular person in the room because you tend to piss people off. But it's all done from this place of like that's what a mother does.
No, but that's really informed your work. I mean, this is what you do. You show up for people in that way. You peer into the souls of people and you call forth that which is hiding. See. And yeah, I mean, it's.
I was gonna tag on to that because we had talked about earlier, and when I met you, I was actually in a lot different place than I am now.
Oh yeah.
But I remember it was funny you were talking about that, kind of took me back to that place, and Tyler was saying what you were saying, so thank you for that. But it wasn't a connection. There was a connection when I met you, obviously, but when I saw you, but the word that came to mind was safe. And for me, at that time, for that to be echoed at a woman was very, very strange. And it made me curious to know more about you, because that's what, when I saw you, you were talking, you weren't even looking at me, you were talking sideways, but you were talking to Ashley, I think, but it was safe, So it's interesting, to hear that from, to hear you say that about your mom, and because it was a gift. It was a gift, and it is one that doesn't go by the wayside, at all. So, yeah.
I think that really speaks.
We have to have all these cameras. Crying.
I really feel like that speaks
And
to the dynamic.
The hell's going on over there?
The dynamic ability.
It's a beautiful ring.
Sorry, Lauren.
It was well designed.
It really was. It was really cool.
Yeah, Lauren recommended the jeweler for the rings.
With my little tear.
Phenomenal jeweler. That what you just said, it really touches me because it speaks to, the diversity and dynamic abilities of a mother. Like, I show up for you as a place where you can be safe, but I may show up for somebody as a place where they can be vulnerable or where they can be angry because there's nowhere else to do that. It's really about showing up the way. I always just think about how my mom was a completely different mom to me than she was to my brother because we're completely different people. Mm-hmm. And she would shape shift into who she needed to be to parent that child. All the while just maintaining this core center and this groundedness of who she was. She was a phenomenal teacher. Mm-hmm. She was a phenomenal teacher for me. Even though our belief systems varied greatly, she was the most profound spiritual teacher I've had to date, really. Mm-hmm. And the third time on the 5-MeO, I just really got this, insane experience where I felt... So when my mom died, I would describe it as the thing that tethered me to the planet left. Mm. And I was just... I couldn't find my feet. The thing that was anchoring me was gone, and I couldn't find my feet. My mom was also a hard ass, just so you know. I would come to her crying about something. One time I was crying to her about going to school and working and having kids. And she turned around and said, "Why are you crying? You chose this, and you're not the first mom to ever do this. So quit school or quit bitching," right? That's how she would deal with things. Mm-hmm. And she was gone. The thing that was exactly who I needed her to always be in the moment, and she's gone. And I just had this, beautiful experience where the sense of safety that she took with her when she left was restored to me, and the imagery that came to me was it was this bar of light that it was blue and it represented safety. It was this iridescent blue color, and somebody just pushed it back into my divine line. Mm-hmm. I just felt it encapsulate my divine line. Mm-hmm. And I knew everything was going to be okay. And I had this feeling of not an emotion of gratitude, but a state of gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting because you talk about this dream you had the day before and how your mother's waiting to go home. And some of the work that we've been doing lately is around
dream.
this,
I
this
caught that
dream
too,
work,
yeah.
and about really the fundamental nature of it is booting up the emotional systems that we've been disconnected from
Right.
for our whole life, and grief, panic, despair, that was one of them. Yeah, it's like that was the key
That unlocked the
that
door.
unlocked it, and
Yeah.
it's a really beautiful story, beautiful imagery around that. And
Well, and it speaks to the plant medicine as well, because it's exactly what you needed.
It's exactly what I needed.
You couldn't have thought of that.
But like, how did I mean, I just still, like, I just keep going back to what Chris said about, like, you're not going to know how this happened. You can't understand the mechanics of it. You can't understand how Ibogaine picked this up and then 5-MeO concluded it. Like, it just was so synergistic and just mind-blowing. And when I was coming back into my body from the third round of the 5-MeO, I had this guttural, hysterical, uncontrollable laughter, which melts.
We all know
we've
about
all
that.
had
Just laughing
Like,
so
the
hard.
way I heard it described is like the biggest cosmic joke that you've ever played on yourself,
Yeah.
and you finally get the punchline, and it's like, oh my god, and it's just erupting in the most beautiful
like
laughter.
a fucking hyena.
Like
man.
a child.
And you're just like laughing so hard and so loud. Like, you know, this whole time my eyes are closed. So I'm in my inner world, which is, I think for some people probably unfamiliar. But for me, like, that's where I like to hang out. It's my favorite neighborhood. So it feels very comfortable to me to be in this place and just be laughing like so deep. And then that laughter fades into soft tears of gratitude. And then those soft tears of gratitude fade into deep grief. And then that deep grief fades into tribal somatic movement, where I am like flailing my legs and waving my arms and beating my chest and
This is we
throwing
do all.
my arms up and back, and I'm like hitting my legs and hitting my chest and just having this total somatic experience. I'm just letting whatever come up and out.
Can
You're
you let, like,
embodying-
for people who don't know what somatic means, not myself, can you
Not myself. I know better.
Can you
I'm
go
smart.
into what that term means
I'm
or
smart.
implies, just for the people
Sure,
who don't know?
it's really like the physical cellular.
Okay, got it.
experience.
I knew that. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure.
You're just moving it through your body, you know. It was just really profound to just let myself feel. One of the things that I teach people is like, okay, if you experience trauma and you decide, I'm going to shut that down, your emotions live on a line graph, let's say, okay? So you experience this trauma and you shut this part of the line graph down. I am not going to feel this pain. This is negative. I don't want it.
Yeah.
You inadvertently shut down the equal and opposite joy. So your breadth of experience as a dynamic, emotional human being
Right.
becomes shorter.
Right.
Yes.
Fantastic book. Debbie Ford, she writes, called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers.
Ooh.
And it's exact concept, and it's the whole program that's dedicated to specifically,
Interesting.
yeah, she talks about the narrowing. She talks about like your whole being, your whole emotional being's like a giant castle.
Yeah.
And what we do is as we grow up, we start locking all these doors until eventually we're just in this 3-room, 2-bedroom apartment or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's usually because we're sitting there trying to chase the light, only focusing on the good.
Right.
And
Toxic
that
positivity.
yeah, and the real gold is in the shadows.
You know, it's so funny. I always love when people like say, "Oh, there's a whole book about that." Because I'm like, really, that's just something I got in meditation. I didn't even know that was a real thing.
I don't have to read the goddamn
I
book.
don't
How about
know.
that?
I just didn't. I just don't. I always just am like, oh, this is how I see it. I don't think it's a real like thing in the world.
Was there an instance, and I'm talking from my own experience, but was there an instance where, or was there a feeling at some point, especially with like the DMT, where there's this calling to look at the scary or look at the ugly, because it's part of like because it falls in line with what you just said, like this equals this, so you have to look at that.
So, no,
No?
because
Okay.
I've been looking at the scary and the ugly since I've been on this planet.
Okay.
a lot of people believe, it's kind of scientifically proven at this point, that whatever happens to you in utero, like while whatever's going on with your mother's emotional state is transferred to you. So my mom was in an abusive, neglectful marriage when she was pregnant with me. The day I was born, my mother was in labor. My dad couldn't emotionally handle it. He went to get coffee. I met him the first time when she took me home from the hospital. He never came back. So my life from the get-go has been, the common threads have been like abandonment and betrayal, over and over and over again. So for as long as I can remember, there's been abandonment and betrayal. Looking at the ugly has just been a requirement of staying alive. For me, really, the reason I wasn't able to access these polar ends of the emotional
I guess that was my
spectrum
question.
anymore
Yeah, was that, or to get to that
was
place.
because when my mother, so the day my mom was told that we were told my mom was going to die, I was the only person in the room who heard that. My whole family was there. I was the one who heard it. The surgeon knew I was the only one who heard it because he walked right up to me and said, "I'm really sorry. Know what everyone else is going, we're going to get her better." And no, we're not.
Right.
I had that same thing happen with my grandma.
Yeah, where
Yeah.
you just hear.
Where
you're
like
just
nobody, I was like, is nobody getting what's happening? And it was like,
nobody.
so I have to break it to you? Shit,
Well, and
Yeah.
and if you can.
I mean, and I honestly, in some cases, I couldn't. Like, I would tell people, and they just couldn't.
They couldn't hear it.
Well, and
Couldn't
it's
hear it.
it's
Yeah.
it's terrible because it's not. It's a grief that can't be shared and dispersed amongst the group, right? You
Right.
have to carry
You
the
have
whole
to carry
burden.
it
You carry the
yourself.
whole burden, and then my mom and I were always deeply emotional together and very vulnerable with one another, and we shared the entire breadth of our emotions. And after she got sick, I was told I had started crying in her room, and I was told I couldn't cry around her.
By a family member.
Yes. 2 weeks before she died, we're alone together in her hospital room. It was the day we found out she was going to go on hospice. And she pulled me into her bed. She said, she always called me Cookie Face. She said, come lay
Love
with me.
that.
Come lay with me, Cookie. She said I had such a sweet face. I was like a cookie, and a cookie was her favorite dessert, by the way. So she would say, "Come lay with me, Cookie Face," and I crawled up in her hospital bed, and she sang to me for the last time. She sang Helen Reddy's "You and Me Against the World," which was always our song. And I said, "Mom, who am I going to talk to when you're gone?" She said, "You're going to talk to me. You're going to talk to me. You just keep talking to me, and I'll be right there to answer you." And I started crying, and she said, "Why did you stop crying with me?" And I said, "Because I was told I couldn't cry around you." And she said, "God, Lauren, I felt so alone because you haven't cried with me." It was so profound.
We need a tissue box.
We do.
We do. What happened?
Like, I had let so
I want
much...
the cameras to see the tears.
I
This
had
is
let
good.
so much grief, like, sit in my body
Yeah.
because I was listening to what, like,
Other people
Other
said about
people
cutting off
said
your emotions.
about
Yeah.
cutting off my emotions and not being present with them. And what I had realized is in that moment when, my higher power is like just this platinum level tapestry weaver. I get told that my husband and I go to the cafeteria to get something to eat, and he opens up his phone, and there's a quote by Viktor Frankl that says something to the extent of, "Between a stimulus and a response is where you decide who you're going to be." And I wish I could have decided in that moment to be vulnerable. But Militia came in and fell on my heart like a grenade, and she cut off the polarity of my
time for that.
emotional experience because I had to help my mom die.
Right. You
I
got
had
a
to
job
cha-
to do.
I had to change her diapers. When my mom was dying, she fell out of a moving vehicle. She got bathed, unmedicated post-surgery. I watched her get her bowels disimpact. I mean, it was freaking brutal. And there was just no way I could be there to do what I needed to do for her and be vulnerable. I would have literally died. It was not happening. Not to mention, which this is probably going to be an interesting topic for people who are listening, I'm incredibly empathetic. I have access to quite a few of my spiritual gifts. one of my empathies, and Simon can attest to this actually, is that when someone else is experiencing discomfort in their body, it lands in mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before my mom got diagnosed, I would wake up every night for like 6 months scratching my bone, this bone right here. And I would tell Michael, like my husband, I would tell him like, hey, there's something wrong with my bone. And he would say, it's not your skin. And I'm like, no, it's my bone. Well, this is where my mom got diagnosed with cancer, in this arm. And it was in her bone.
Mm-hmm.
And after she got diagnosed, it went away. Well, she was going through this time where she just was in so much pain, and she got up in the middle of the night, and I was there, and it looked like her spine was slanted. And I went to sleep that night, and I had this dream, and she showed up, and she said, don't let me die alone in the corner of my house in pain. I'm in so much pain. You have to do something. So I started calling around, and I ended up getting her some help. All the while, I start having back problems. I can't figure out what's wrong with my back. I go to our chiropractor. Ashley and Tyler and I share a chiropractor. I go to our chiropractor, and he says, did you injure your back? And I said, no. And he said, you have 3 discs in your back that are out of place, like pretty significantly. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. And he showed them to me, like which ones they were. When I got my mom into Stanford to address her spine, they were the exact same vertebrae she had tumors in. She had tumors in 3 of her vertebrae in her back, and they were the same as the ones that were out of alignment in my spine.
Mm-hmm.
And I was physically dying with her. Like I was trying to take all of her pain into my body so she didn't have to suffer.
Because that's our natural reaction, right? We don't. We want to be there to help. We're the people. We're the carriers. We're the, hey, I can
do
I can
this.
shoulder this for you. I got
Well, and
it.
it just speaks. It just speaks to the reverence that we should hold for what we are, so far beyond the body.
So far.
So far beyond the body. I mean, I'm in awe of all this, and also like profoundly moved by what I don't recognize in myself.
Right.
By all of this. You know?
Yeah. And so Militia, like, God love her. She carried that. She held my mom. She carried that. The feminine part of me, the gentle part of me,
Couldn't do it.
would just crumble under that weight like a car, like as if a car had been thrown atop of me. And Militia can just, she is the one who goes into the battlefield, throws the wounded soldier over her shoulder, and says, "I'm going to get you out of here." That's how she functions, and so she really carried a lot for my mom, and just having this beautiful experience with the Ibogaine and the 5-MeO, where I could just come to peace with all of this and have so much gratitude for all the parts of me that had to show up to keep me alive.
Yeah.
That had to show up to be present for that experience, and now can shift into this place of like, it's so interesting because after she passed away, this is such a trip. I couldn't remember laughing with her for the longest time. I couldn't remember all the fun things we did together, and she was my best friend, and we did everything together.
You guys did.
I mean, we would come up and get our hair cut with Ashley and spend a whole day shopping and having lunch, and we did everything together. And I couldn't remember laughing with her. I couldn't remember anything funny. It was like all this imagery of her suffering and dying was just branded into my brain. And, we're packing to move to another state, and I'm going through my closet, and I find this box. And for her 50th birthday, I had collected 50 different memories. We threw her a breakfast at Tiffany's party. And we
Did you
gave
guys wear
her
the hats and
we
everything?
gave her actual Tiffany's jewelry, and we had a custom cake made. It was a Tiffany's box, and I had collected 50 memories over the course of her life from her dad and her stepmom and her cousins and her friends, and I'd put them in a box. Most of them were handwritten. And then whatever number I couldn't fill in, I just filled in with my own memories. And I don't know what compelled me to, because I genuinely have not opened that box since she died. But right before she died, a couple weeks before, I said, I don't care if you give me anything else. I want that box. She said, take it now. And I said, okay, because things were very tumultuous with my family. So I took the box, I took it home, it sat in my closet this whole time.
Which is brutal because that's when everybody should come together, but they're so stressed out that they can't keep the dragons at bay anymore.
And I'm always the one with the target on my back. And I don't mean that in a victim way. I just mean like it's almost as though the energy knows I can handle it. So I just become the direction it flies in.
Yeah.
So I'm packing everything and I find the box. It's under like a bunch of my clothes and I find it and I sit down and I start reading it. And I just have this beautiful moment and just like all these tears because I'm reading all these memories that I wrote down of her and I. And it's almost as though I'm reading a story about somebody else, but they start triggering other joyful memories that I haven't had access to before. And I'm just like, oh my God, we had so much fun. We had so much fun. We laughed so hard. We did stupid, hilarious things.
Trish.
Oh my God, Trish and Talia.
Yeah.
So when my mom was losing all of her hair, she got a couple
I'm
of
glad
wigs.
I'm the only one who had no idea what was
No.
going on. I looked at
No,
Tyler.
this
Tyler
is
was like,
us.
what the fuck's going on?
This is one of my memories of her.
She got a couple of wigs and we named them after strippers. That was the whole joke. They were my mom's alter ego and they were named after strippers. Except for Trish. Trish, when Trish was first put on before Ashley got Trish and gave her a proper cut, my brother's like, my mom FaceTimes my brother in the wig store and she's like, what do you think of this wig? And he goes, okay, Trish, you look like a dykey soccer mom, which was how Trish got her name.
That sounds like something I would say.
It's like, it was so serious. It was the worst ever. But then, of course, Ashley made it really cute. But we couldn't change Trish's name after that.
It's Trish. Yeah.
No.
She was Trish.
It's Trish.
Trish and Talia. So.
Okay, so you've had this beautiful experience.
Yeah. So
Can I just take a break real quick? Daniel, hey, we love you, man.
David, we love you. If you haven't cried during this.
he's bawling
been
back
crying
there.
this whole
I
time.
love you.
I just want you to know,
so
like,
much.
we see you, bro. Like, I love you, man. Don't hide, bro. We see you, man. Love you,
We're
dude.
going to cuddle puddle
Yeah,
after
that's
this.
what we're gonna do afterwards. Anyway, continue. Sorry, I just don't. He looks alone over there. And I
We
wanna let
love
you know
you.
you're not alone. I see you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after, this whole experience, like, how are you integrating everything? Because that's a big topic.
So crazy story. I've always been a writer, very creative writer. After my mom died, I couldn't write. The other thing was I had so much electrical activity happening in my brain, I couldn't read anything. Like I couldn't get through a page of anything without having to read the page or paragraphs or whatever. The day after Ibogaine, I wrote 35 intuited pages on integration. So it just flew out of me. And Ibogaine told me, you cannot undo what I did, but you can recreate the same old. Like you're a blank slate.
Right.
This is your opportunity. So I went over every aspect of my life and asked the Ibogaine, because the voice is still very alive for that 24 to 48 hours. Like, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? And I started getting all of this information on how to integrate into my marriage, into my friend group, into business, what my life gets to look like. And now that I'm home, some of the biggest integration things for me have been meditating without a timer. I'm going to show up and I'm not going to get up until I feel peaceful. I'm not going to get up until I'm connected to that divine beingness. Sitting in the sauna has been really huge for me, continuing to help my body build the neurological defenses to protect the healing. A sauna is a great way to do that. And what integration really looks like for me, I think, in any work that I do is being able to identify after I've done a significant amount of work exactly what behavior patterns get to change in my life and a contingency plan on what I'm going to do when I run up to familiar situations. So where I would normally shut down, I speak. Where I would normally suppress, I allow. Where I would normally withhold, I don't. Like, no matter what that looks like.
And I've seen that, it was just like, you've been a mentor to me for many years now. And, we were talking earlier about, you've always been vulnerable with like things that have happened with you in the past, and you've always shared really personal things, but it wasn't until you came back and like called me up, and we were the first stop.
Yeah, you
when
guys
you
were
came
my
back,
first stop.
and you walked in the door, and it was like I got to see. I got to see you in your full vulnerability. You went there. You went that place where you normally don't go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You confronted Militia.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was really beautiful.
And she still wants to come out. She's like, I mean, now it's just it's beautiful because Ibogaine has restored my ability to choose.
Mm-hmm.
So she's there. She'll tap on my shoulder and whisper in my ear, like, I'm right here, boss. And I'm like, we're good, honey. We're good.
Yeah.
And that's been a really big deal for me because, you know, I came home to the life my trauma built.
Mm-hmm.
I did not come home to a different life.
Yeah.
The first thing Ibogaine had me write down was, nothing has changed but you. I changed. Nothing else changed. I came home to what my trauma built. So my husband and I would do this dance, right? Like we would do this dance and these conversations would get heated and go a certain way. And I was home for a couple of days and he was really triggered by how calm I was. Like it was really unnerving to him because he has been walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if
He
I
doesn't
wasn't
know what to do now.
even if I wasn't being emotionally volatile, just it's not hard to see your body become affected by something that triggers your trauma, right? So just out of love for me, he would walk on eggshells to try not to trigger my body, right? Kevin's back.
Yeah, he's been with us the whole time.
Okay.
He zooms around.
He's reminding me of my cues. I'm like, okay, I want to bring that up. Okay.
That's what it's here for.
Just
Okay.
flying by with little cue cards.
Miniature
Only he can carry.
Whispering them in our
His
ears.
little fly strings.
integration.
Bring up integration.
Tyler will actually tell you that you can put a string to him and then walk him. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll get into that to another episode.
That's
but,
pretty fancy.
When we were kids, we used to knock flies out, stun them, tie little strings to them, and when they'd wake up, we had a...
My husband
fly.
used to put butterflies in the freezer when he was a kid.
Okay, refocus.
So anyway, we would do this dance, and I get home, and he wants to do the dance with me, and I'm neutral, and he's trying to do the dance, and he's upping the ante to do the dance.
Get a reaction out of you.
And I looked at him, and I said, I love you, and I'm not going to be sick with you. And I walked away. Not because he's sick, but because the dynamic we've created is sick.
Yeah.
Right? It's not from a healthy place. And also, like, we can revisit this conversation later, right? We need a break in this energy. We can revisit this conversation later. And just being okay to every time it starts to go there, shut it down.
Yeah, have a pattern interrupt.
Shut it down. Shut it down. You know, be that face of loving interruption. And I'm not going to say it's been easy, but I'm going to say that there's been a rapid and significant amount of healing going on in my life. And, you know, healing doesn't always look
Pretty.
pretty.
I don't think it typically does.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not.
yeah. I mean, I think about my own shit. It's always ugly and messy and messed up.
My favorite meme ever that has ever come out was like some chick at the top of a mountain in all white linen meditating. And it's like, this is what you think it looks like to be spiritually healthy. And then it's like the girl from the grunge on the bottom is like, this is what it really looks like to like do spiritual work.
But I always think of it, it's like what we do is we get wounded deeply, and then we take like, we grab like a bunch of duct tape and start putting it on the wound and hammering nails with wood over the top of it. So like,
Got some makeshift splint.
The apparatus.
So then healing,
Yeah.
it's like we have to take all that off,
And
pour
actually
some
let it
disinfectant
heal.
on the wound,
Yeah.
scrub it clean, right?
Yeah, and actually let it do its thing. So, I mean, that piece of integration of just like, okay, like I'm going to run up against the same stuff. I'm going to do something different. Like that's not always easy. It's not always, you know, I was pissed off last night and really, really hurt, and I completely shut down. Lights off, no one's home, shut down.
What's that like? I don't know what that's like.
I know you
Like,
don't,
kinda
right?
like-
You know what I bet you don't, you also don't
What's
know?
funny is I identify with so much about what you're talking about.
I bet you don't know about fucking them out either.
What? Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I've never, I can't
Yeah.
really, you know, resonate
Yeah,
with
I've
that,
never
but-
done that. I mean, I've heard of people who've done that, but I've never actually done it. I think that would be on my freaking epitaph if I hadn't had to
Fuck
say,
it, I'm out.
Fuck it, I'm out.
Fuck it, I'm
Like,
out.
that's how I left the planet.
Okay, so all right, so Lauren, you have an integration plan. You're one of few that have planned it. How much would you say that it's important to have community?
I think it's really important to have community, and especially people who have done similar work to your work. Doesn't have to be the same work, but they're just in the work, and they understand the basic principles, even if the mechanics are different. It just kind of allows to wear, like, it's kind of like that idea of wearing life like a loose garment. Like, it really allows for you to have space to have your own journey, but then also to have a place to come where you can feel seen and heard when the journey, when the load gets heavy. Because it's not, if we were intended to kind of heal in a vacuum, I think we'd all just be on individual planets by ourselves,
Right.
It's like we need that interaction. And
We exist in relationship.
We exist in relationship, and we also need to hear about other people's experience because we create a reflection for each other. And the people around us may, in their own walk, illuminate something in us we didn't even know was there. When you have community, you have people who stand in your blind side. And they say, hey, there's that over there. And sometimes they don't even have to point it out. Sometimes just their journey points it out. And that's such a beautiful kind of synergistic effect of having people around you doing the work. I mean, the hardest part for us about moving out of state is leaving this community. We are just beside ourselves about it because it's been so vital for us to have the interactions. And especially, in Bold with Michael, like he just has really valued the connection he's built with all the guys there.
Yeah, and I mean that's I do want to. We're gonna have to close here pretty soon. So if there's any, burning thoughts, bring them up now. But I really want to just say that's really the goal of the work here, right? We're striving to create. What it feels like we've done is our society has gotten real sick and isolated, and we've just, I've been involved and working in that arena for a long time, and I was dying inside, right? So the goal of this work is to build a community where we're like all pieces of flint, and we can make sparks together, right? And we can see what there's such a value to it, to build a village, right? To get back into that that old tribal sort of thing that worked for millions of years. And you're moving to Texas, so we're taking applicants.
Yeah. You're a spiritual mother.
Yeah.
They're going to need you.
We're going to need we have a big void there. But with that being said, please email us your thoughts, sometna4ya@gmail.com. Check out our website, brotherhoodoflivingdivinity.com. We host men's groups meetings every other Tuesday night from 6 to 8:30. And anything else? Any closing thoughts?
I would also encourage, if I could talk, I would also encourage people, if they have questions, like maybe you don't want to jump right in. Maybe, there's a lot of people that we talk to about this stuff that, they're right there. Like they're right there. They're like, well, I don't know about this or that or whatnot. Or maybe just, you have we have the Bold Instagram that Daniel runs. We have the email that Tyler just talked about, some TNA for you. Questions, like shoot us questions, like it doesn't have to be something that you have to share, this huge, profound thing. Just
if you want to just share your personal
We'd love
story, your growth story, we would love to hear about it,
Really would love it.
We'd love to relate.
And the beautiful thing is that this isn't the old model, which is like, you go see a therapist and supposedly this therapist got it all together and you're supposed to go in and absorb what they know and integrate it into your life. And there's this separation between the two, this hierarchy. So the reality is we're all just regular ass people trying to figure it out. And there's a lot of magic when we meet on level playing ground in that way. So we're just sending the invites out.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would ask, what would be your, if you had to, what would you tell somebody who's on the fence about thinking about doing what you're doing to, maybe get them to that point?
I will say this. Before I decided to move ahead with Ibogaine, I felt like it was necessary to get everybody in my camp on board in support of me. My mentors, my husband,
Doctors.
doctors, my psychologist. Like, I really went the distance. Afterward, I came home, and I had thought I would only ever do psychedelics one time. Like, I was very much like, this is a one and done kind of situation for me. And after I came home, I said to Michael that I had abandoned and betrayed myself so deeply by pulling my people. I was doing it from a place of trying to love myself, right? And protect my sobriety. But I would have allowed myself to remain in mental anguish.
Right.
If
You would have
people
held
had
on to
said
all
no.
that. Yeah.
If people had not gotten on board for me. So I think the question that I would ask people who are on the fence is like, what's the cost of staying where you're at?
Right,
What's it costing you?
That's a great question. Great.
How big is the price tag on your current situation?
Well, thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was
By
amazing.
the way, we haven't like said ass or talked about anything raunchy or inappropriate enough.
Shit.
on
Fuck. Queef.
Balls.
This. Michelle just need to throw it in the
Tyler's a
room.
queef.
Cock
We,
balls.
Tyler is a queen.
yeah. He's an air sign.
Yeah, I mean, there's signs on the
I
queef.
said we were just sitting outside the other night. And I'm
He's
like,
an air sign, so he's a
I was just
queef.
like, Tyler's an air sign. I'm like, oh my god, he's a queef.
He's a queef.
What the fuck?
What the fuck? I'm a queef?
Okay,
Right.
you piece of shit earth sign, okay?
I know. I thought that was really funny.
That's good.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No, it's been a blast. And with that, we'll close out with our favorite song ever. The TNA outro. We can't hear it.
We can't hear the song, but we're dancing anyway.
We're totally dancing out.
Everybody likes little TNA.
A straight trip.